Yeah, okay, very good. Thank you.
Right. Bill Murphy just told our whole story. We can go home now.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Well, I think what we need to do to start is to hear about your backgrounds first, and how you got here, and why you came here. So, Rob, you first.
Sure. Thanks, Rock. When I came here in 1987, I interviewed in '86, and I met John Webster. And one of the reasons why I came to Wisconsin was because they had this biomedical engineering master's program. Can you hear me? Yeah. When I got here in '87, the master's program wasn't accepting any biomedical engineering students anymore. And for a long time throughout my my tenure process as an assistant professor, I felt that we were really missing something. So I went. The thing that was keeping the entire thing together was a lunch seminar that Willis Tompkins ran. And it met, I don't know, I think it was like almost once a month or something like that.
I think it was more frequent than that. It was joint with medical physics.
Yeah, it was like, I think almost every week. And the distinction of this program was we had free lunch. If you sent a message to Willis before 10 a.m., you got a free sandwich. So it was the most popular seminar in the entire campus, and there were a lot of people that came from all over campus to listen to biomedical engineering speakers. By the time I got tenure, I went to John, and at the time Willis was department chair of electrical engineering, and John was the director of what was called the biomedical engineering program. And I said to John, why don't we do something about biomedical engineering? This is important, and biomedical engineering departments are springing up around the country. John said, well, I tried that, but the deans aren't interested. So if you're interested, why don't you do it? And so I said, well, John, I'll think about it. And I went home, and each year the College of Engineering publishes this annual report, and it was a glossy document, and somewhere in the annual report, they had a little headshot of John Webster, Director of Biomedical Engineering, and a little paragraph. There wasn't a whole lot of what was going on because there weren't any students. I opened up the annual report about a year later, and my headshot was in there. and it said, Rob Radwin is Director of Biomedical Engineering. So I said, oh my gosh, now I have to do something. John just basically turned it over. So that's kind of how it got started.
Willis?
Well, we have a lot of time to fill because Bill Murphy stopped too early. So I'm going to go back a long time ago. I was born in a small town in northern Maine. Small town.
Talk about Moxie.
Moxie is a soft drink from Maine. If anybody didn't know the roots of the word Moxie, it actually was a medicine first, but it was taken off the market when the FDA started because it had so much alcohol in it, and it turned into a soft drink, which you can still buy in Maine, Moxie. That guy has Moxie, that's where that word came from. Anyway, you set me on a side. So I was born in a small town in northern Maine, and I grew up in this small town, kind of isolated in a remote part of Maine. And when it was time to go to college, I went to the state university, the University of Maine, that had a really good reputation in electrical engineering. So I got an electrical engineering degree. And I was ready to go out into industry at the end of my time. I got multiple job offers. It was a good time for engineering in those days. And one of the faculty in the department had an interest in doing a project. He had a grant to do a project on modeling cardiovascular, a certain aspect of cardiovascular systems. So that was where I got my introduction to what potentially was biomedical engineering. So I got my master's degree, and I was really fortunate to have been convinced by that faculty member to get a master's degree, because my wife Bonnie there was also in a master's degree program at the University of Maine, and on a blind date we met, because I had an office as a grad student with another grad student, a male, and she had an office in zoology with another grad student who was a female, and they set us up. And so here we are after 56 years of marriage. So, I'm telling a little too elaborate a story, aren't I? So
Biomedical engineering.
so after my MS degree, I went to industry. Yeah, our first date was bowling, which we never had done before, I think. So Bonnie had another year to go, and I went to industry. She had another year to get her degree. I went to industry, and in the meantime, she graduated and went to medical school in Philadelphia. While I was in industry, I remembered my master's degree and the biomedical engineering things that I did, and I said, well, if I could take some night courses, I could learn more about this field called biomedical engineering. And so I took courses from, I think, Northeastern University, because I was fairly close to there. I took a course in physiology, and then I took a course, I think, from MIT, a night course, where they talked about these new instruments that were coming along, new medical devices like heart-lung machines. So I kind of got hooked on the concept of biomedical engineering, but I was working as an engineer, an electrical engineer at the time. And Bonnie had gone to Philadelphia to medical school in the meantime, so I said, well, I'm going to apply to one university that has a biomedical engineering degree program in Philadelphia. And luckily, they accepted me. So I went to the University of Pennsylvania and got a degree in what was called biomedical electronic engineering, because it was in the electrical engineering department. It was a program, not a department by itself. They started the Department of Biomedical Engineering about 3 or 4 years after I got my PhD degree. So then Bonnie, in the meantime, was getting a medical degree. And incidentally, she went from Maine to the University of Wisconsin to get her undergraduate degree, which is quite unusual, because we had really good school that I went to at the University of Maine. Anyway, so I got into the University of Pennsylvania grad school for a PhD program. And Bonnie was there in medical school. So after her the first semester of her sophomore year, we decided to get married. So then, and that's the beginning of my story. What was the question, Ron?
Sure, that's a part of the question, but thanks, Willis.
So we had this biomedical engineering master's program that used to exist, and as Bill gave a very good history of the department, this university has a culture that is really unique. I mean, the collaborations that we have are really the envy of in the world. The chancellor at the time when the biomedical engineering department was pretty dormant, we weren't getting very much support from the college. came up with this idea that because Wisconsin was so collaborative, and this was David Ward. I don't know if people remember David Ward. He decided that he was going to do something about fostering this interdisciplinary collaborative culture across campus. So he took 10% of every dean's budget. Every college, medical school, engineering, LNS, all the colleges, the deans lost 10% of their budget off the top. And he said the only way you can get it back is by innovating interdisciplinary collaborative programs across the campus. I want all the college deans to work together to create new collaborations. So this was a time when the deans were looking for things to do. So our program was, as Bill mentioned, was being reviewed. Ray Vanderby joined us. Willis and I decided that, Willis was department chair. I had this brochure that I put out for biomedical engineering because I didn't have any money. My department was very generous to allow me to print it up, and anytime students contacted me, I would send them this brochure. This master's degree program was being reviewed, so I went to Willis during one of these lunch seminars, and I said, "You're a department chair, you know all about departments. Let's get together and write tell the university that they should really foster biomedical engineering. This is really important." So Willis and I, we met like once a week. We would sit in my office and start writing this report. And Ray joined us, and we were working together. And this,
You didn't tell why Ray joined us, right?
well, I think Bill did. Bill mentioned that he was on this
Let's
committee.
review that. Why?
So the graduate school dean, who was John Wiley at the time, put this committee together. He wanted to get rid of all these deadbeat master's programs, which he thought biomedical engineering was one of the deadbeats. We didn't have any master's students. We didn't have any money. We weren't admitting any students. They convened this committee with Paul DeLuca from the medical school, and David Gustafson from engineering, and Ray Vanderby from orthopedics. And Ray came to the meeting, and they said, we're going to kill this program, essentially. He said, well, I don't want to kill the program. I thought this was a committee to start biomedical engineering. So he joined Willis and I. And
He quit the committee.
he quit the committee, and he came and joined us. So at the time, there was really a lot of, it was very fortuitous at the time. The dean was losing his budget, and we wrote this report, and at the same time, the Whitaker Foundation was starting to support the growth of biomedical engineering departments around the country. A number of us had grants from the Whitaker Foundation when we were assistant professors, and I was one of them. I think I met Rock. I don't know, were you one of the? So Rock and I were on an airplane going to this meeting, and that was the first time I met Rock on the airplane. We were both grantees from this Whitaker Foundation, and they started a lot of assistant professors around the country in starting their careers, and it was really very nice grant for young faculty.
Could I say more about the Whitaker Foundation?
Sure.
Thanks. So the Whitaker Foundation was started by a fellow named Whitaker. Uncas was his first name. And he had a kind of an interest in biomedical engineering or engineering in medicine.
He founded the AMP company in Pennsylvania.
Right. He made like switches and electrical products, and he became a multimillionaire. And so he started a foundation, the Whitaker Foundation, and then after he died, his children took it over and ran it, and they got older and older, and they said, well, we don't want to pass this foundation on to some new person. So they decided that they were going to spend all of the money that they had to support biomedical engineering, and they had about $500,000 at the time. And so they wanted to spend them.
500 million.
How many?
like
I'm sorry, 500 million. I forgot 3 zeros on that, didn't I? 500 million. So they decided that they would do everything they could, like support new young biomedical engineering-oriented faculty. And then they decided, well, we'll give money to universities who are willing to start departments of biomedical engineering. And so they went, and so they actually ended up giving money to start many departments of biomedical engineering over the several years that they gave away all their money.
So we were writing this proposal to keep this master's program alive, and we looked at the proposal and we said, you know, this is pretty good. So we sent it off to the Whitaker Foundation, and I get this letter that, congratulations, you won $1 million grant to start biomedical engineering at the University of Wisconsin.
That was our first piece of luck.
That was our first piece of luck. So I went to the dean, and well, we went to the grad school first, and we told them, look, we've got $1 million grant to start biomedical engineering, and so they, grad school said, well, go ahead and keep your master's program. So we had the master's program approved for another 10 years, and I went to the dean and I said, I've got an idea on how we can get your 10% back. We've got an interdisciplinary program that collaborates with all sorts of people around campus, from medical school, the vet school. I think we had collaborations in LNS. I mean, it was really a lot of people were interested in biomedical engineering at the time, because I had this brochure with all these people's names from all around the campus. And so the dean, who was not supportive of biomedical engineering, all of a sudden became our biggest supporter. That was John Bollinger, and he allowed us to proceed. And Willis and John and several other faculty started the undergraduate program.
Yeah, so the undergraduate program, so part of our journey was we had to prove that we were the best of the university system campuses to start a undergraduate degree program in biomedical engineering. So we had to file, and there hadn't been a new department started in the university for a number of years, except in the medical school. So we had no model, nobody to talk to about how to do this, but we finally figured out that you had to file Format A, which was a permission to plan a new degree not a department, but a degree program. And that document had to be circulated to all of the university system 4-year programs, and they had to say, okay, UW-Madison can do this program. And so about a year later, we got the permission to plan, and then we had to write the plan, which they called Format B. So we had to come up with a curriculum, and we had no courses, of course. So we're starting with a blank slate. And Whitaker Foundation had sponsored conferences, so we would go to these conferences. I remember one we went to that was department representatives from established departments and aspiring departments like we were. And I think the biggest thing I learned from that meeting was that there's no standard curriculum for biomedical engineering. We had to make up our own. So we started from nothing, and we're about to start an undergraduate degree program, and we don't have any courses. So John Webster came along with us, and we decided on 3 tracks for our students so that they could have basically a theme that they would follow through our curriculum. And it was bioinstrumentation, biomaterials, and biomechanics. So those 3 things we wanted our students to follow through tracks. And so John Webster volunteered to do the bioinstrumentation track. Incidentally, I want to point out that we have right here in the front table Nancy Webster, who was a great partner to John Webster over their long marriage, and her son is with her. And so she's here to learn more about what John did, I guess. So one of the things that we we had these meetings with people from industry who came, and in those meetings they told us, well, we only want to hire people with depth in their field. We want real electrical engineers, mechanical engineers, and industrial engineers and so forth. And so we don't know what we would do with a biomedical engineer. Even the companies like Medtronic that made biomedical, implanted pacemakers and things like that. And so we knew we needed to have something more than just a didactic curriculum. And so John Webster was really, John and I both were in industry before we came to, before we decided to get PhDs. So we both had spent, I think John spent about 10 years in industry. And so what we knew from our experience in industry is that no one discipline does everything. That if you're going to do a real world product, you have to have multiple disciplines. So I was working on in my job, I was working on electromechanical systems. So I had to work with mechanical engineers and other kinds of product engineers to ultimately produce a product. And so the big thing that we took away, I think, from our industrial experiences is that you not only have to know your field, but you also have to be able to communicate with other people who are not. Like, mechanical engineers have different kind of language from electrical engineers and so forth. So we were working in environments where we had to write things, documents that others could understand. We had to communicate in regular meetings with all of our other faculty, all of our other engineers of different types that we had to deal with. So we came up with, instead of just having a standard curriculum with coursework and so forth, we decided as a group that we would try something different, that we already had a freshman design course that was well established. And so students basically learn simple design kinds of concepts in that first freshman year. So we decided, let's do design every semester. Let's have students do some kind of real-world design problem solving every semester and create prototypes, physical devices. So let's have design through the curriculum. They'll always be on a design team until they graduate. From the freshman year for 6 more semesters. And we have some of those graduates in the room now. I hope they like that process. But so we knew we had a wealth of potential for finding projects around the campus, because we have a medical school, we have a veterinary school, we have lots of researchers with labs who have ideas for new things to do. And so we started soliciting projects. And ultimately, as we proceeded, unfortunately, Ray Vanderby isn't here with us, one of our founders, but when we ultimately started the degree program, Rob had been the initiator of this whole process, so he became our first department chair. And then I had done both. I had been in electrical engineering, And I had been an undergraduate associate chair as well as the chair of the department, and I kind of liked the interaction with the students better, so I became the undergraduate associate chair. And Ray Vanderby, who should be here, he was really interested in the graduate program, so he became the graduate, for graduate students, associate chair.
When we started the department, well, we weren't the department. We actually started as what the dean called a virtual department.
Right.
And virtual department meant we virtually had nothing. I mean, the department started off, I had a second phone on my desk. That was the Department of Biomedical Engineering. And really, I would answer the phone to the Department of Biomedical Engineering. Students would call up, and that's really how we got started. We had nothing, and we started to, we got this grant. So we were able to hire some new faculty, and we hired a number of faculty. Wally Block was one of our hires. Naomi Chesler, hires. So we had that initial, Nimi Ramanujan was another one. So we had several faculty now who had, no place to go.
Yeah, we had no space.
And, at the time we were starting this process of starting a department, no one knew how to start a department on campus because they hadn't started a department since medical physics, and that was like 1980, so that was almost 20 years ago. And I went to the provost. So the dean who was trying to end biomedical engineering, he became the provost. So John Wiley was now provost. And I went to John and I said, "How do you start a department?" He goes, "Well, I don't know. I've never done it before." So we had to learn a lot of stuff along the way and get all these permissions to start a department. I went to the chancellor. The chancellor didn't know how to start a department. So we were really winging it. We had a number of things happen that were very fortunate. The dean was planning to build this centers building. Bill mentioned that earlier. So I went to the dean and I said, we need a place to go. And we were able to convince the dean to put the department, which was not the intention of that building, in the centers building. We got a new space, and our faculty started joining us.
Yeah. The rest is history.
The rest is history.
So the design program, it taught in multiple years, was pioneered by the biomedical.
Yeah, there's no other department in the world that does design. When we suggested that, the dean said, "Well, this is a crazy idea. This is not sustainable."
Here we are.
So I was Rob was the chair for 10 years, and then 11 years, and I was the associate chair for 15 years before I retired. And so I became the director of the design program, but the most important person who started the design courses was John Webster. So he immediately came on board, and he pioneered. We were doing just-in-time development of courses, so we had no real curriculum at the time.
When we started the program, we were all tenured in different departments.
Right.
And so one of the things we had to do was ask our departments for permission. I was in the industrial engineering department. Willis.
I was the chair of electrical engineering. I was a rebel.
And so we created the department by moving our tenure appointments to the virtual. It was a real risk.
That was a real risk, because if the only way tenured faculty could get fired is if they dissolved the department. So
We had a department with no budget and no place to go. We said, sure, let's do it.
Rob and me and John Webster decided, well, we're gonna do this thing. And so John started teaching the first design courses for the sophomore year, and just in time kept developing these courses, and he developed a core course in bioinstrumentation, which is still taught today. So he was a big kind of implementer for us, and over time we developed the biomechanics. And one thing we did is we wanted to have our students have a conversational ability to talk to people like electrical engineers and mechanical engineers. So we required the first course in electrical engineering, electrical circuits course for all of our students, and we required an entry-level course from mechanical engineering for our students. So they would have a way to talk to other engineers. And we were fortunate to start. And so I became ultimately as part of my associate chair thing, I became the leader of the design course faculty. So I had to go out and do mass emails around the campus and find projects for our students to do, because we wanted them to do real world things that people thought up in their professions, that way they could improve what they did. So when I left after 15 years, we had about 170 students, and then we had one of our PhD graduates named John Puccinelli, right over there, who really was interested in the kinds of things that I was doing, interacting with students and doing these design course projects and so forth. And I was also responsible for writing what's called ABET reports for every engineering department in the country has an accreditation process they have to go through. And John was interested in continuing writing these ABET reports, and he just wrote one that's 300 pages long for our accreditation review, which is coming up in October, where they send a team of other faculty from other universities, mostly faculty, some industrial people, to review all of the engineering departments. So since we got our first accreditation, which I think was in 2003, we've continuously had, largely due to, in fact, because of our design courses, largely due to the design courses, where we teach so many skills that ABET requires for students, that we can pretty much satisfy the ABET review every time, even though you have to write a big, long document. So John Puccinelli, I think I was responsible for advising and interacting with undergraduate students. And when I left 10 years ago, there were about 170 undergraduates. And John told me last night, if I'm right, there's 340 students now. 440. So over the last 10 years, the department has grown from significantly. So John, so Dean Bollinger, who reluctantly let us start this department, said, well, this is a crazy thing to do, this design curriculum. This is not sustainable. The next dean who came in said, he looked at our curriculum, he says, well, this is not sustainable. And then the latest dean who came in, he said, this is not sustainable. So John has been responsible for sustaining it for my what? Industry connection. Right? John, can you tell what my wife is telling? My wife is saying something about you involved with getting people from industry.
It's really a unique program, and no other university can pull it off. We went to conferences and described this. This is our concept for biomedical engineering, and the other departments said, "Oh, you can't do that." But we do, and we have really prospered because of it. I think that that undergraduate program has been a real driver. It's the most popular major for undergraduate majors. When we first started, we were reviewing every student's application.
Yeah, we had a high grade point average that they had to get into the department.
Yeah, and now most undergraduates come into the College of Engineering wanting to be in biomedical engineering. So it's really quite a. I think there's a few people that we also should acknowledge. When we started the department, Corrine Barr.
Right.
Was our department administrator, and she really was an important person who kept the department together. She really rallied us. I mean, if you think about herding cats, Corinne was very good at that. We had a number of department administrators that followed, but the department today is just so much more established than we ever dreamed it would be, and I'm really proud of what the department has become, and the chairs who followed, Beth Myron and Justin Williams, Paul Campanella, have all done a fantastic job keeping the department.
Could I just touch on one thing that I mentioned briefly, but I think it's important to go into some depth. And before the department and before the program, there was John Webster.
Oh yeah.
And John was known internationally,
right,
as a biomedical engineer. As an engineer who did biomedicine, I guess is what we'd say today. So if you have any stories about John, he was a bit of a character, and so it'd be.
We can't say that. His wife
no,
is here.
I think maybe we get Nancy up here to tell us the real
John
story.
used to talk about the travels that he used to do.
Yeah.
With the family.
Oh, his family travels, but he also was internationally known in large part at the beginning because he produced a book in 1978, was the first edition of it. Now it's in the 5th edition, and it was called Medical Instrumentation, Application, and Design. So he was really interested in design.
When I went to chair's meeting, we all used that book when we were graduate students.
Right.
I mean, it was every department chair. Every year at the BMES, the department chairs meet, and every department chair had used that book when they were graduating.
It was actually internationally used. It was the most popular book in biomedical engineering in its day, and now it's in the 5th edition. And besides his research work, that made him kind of internationally famous. And he and Nancy traveled all over the world because people would invite him to come to Thailand. I remember we went together to Thailand and countries all over the place. So he was really well known, and so he was a real asset to our department. But I want to go back to Corrine Barr. Because Corrine was so dedicated to our department as our administrator that she got cancer ultimately, and she was at work 2 days before she died. She came to our department, still operating as our administrator. So she was really dedicated to what we were doing. And she was really interested in foreign students. John and Nancy would host, John and Nancy would host foreign students, and Corrine would be kind of the bridge many times and so forth. Yeah, so she was an important starting point for our department, really important.
So do we have any questions or more stories from the audience? So give you a chance, especially some of the older.
I want to talk about one other person
Sure,
in the
ahead.
room. So we had this freshman design course that the deans. It was started actually by a female faculty, the first woman faculty, a tenured faculty in engineering, in all of engineering. Her name was Denise Denton. She got a national education grant to start a freshman design course, but the deans never really liked that course. And so there was always this pressure. It was a multidisciplinary course where faculty from multiple departments came and became the mentors for the students. It was mostly a course where we would do public service kinds of things. But anyway, so there was another faculty member who was very important in keeping that course going, and her name is Tracy Puccinelli, who's next to John Puccinelli back there. And so as the deans tried to kill that course, Tracy came in and saved it, and she's still the lead faculty member. She's a teaching professor like John. She's the lead faculty member in that freshman design course now. So how come they have the same last name? So John and Tracy were students in our undergraduate program, and I think it was in BME 200 or 201, in our sophomore level course, they met in a design course. And then they ultimately got married, and they've been married for a long time now. So that was very early on, and like John, you started in 1999, when we first started the department. And so there's another kind of partnership that developed because of biomedical engineering. Now we can take questions, Rock.
Okay. So we have, what we want is stories. Do we have anyone that's just got a story to tell? Early days or mid days? Anybody? Go ahead, John.
I think you have to come up on the stage if you want to talk in that mic. Whoa.
Do we have any early graduates of the first programs, first undergraduates or masters?
We have a number of students here who are the first year.
So we must have some stories from you. Come on.
Raise your hand if you graduated in 2000.
I forgot to mention that our first group of students, there were only 11 of them. She was one of the 11. And they had already taken all of the freshman courses that you normally take, like calculus and chemistry and so forth. So they were prepared to enter as sophomores, and there were 11 of them. And I think we had 2 people per team. So we had about 5. That first year, we had only 5 projects to do with people around campus. Yes? Right. Oh, that's an important thing. We just. So that's an important factor that we neglected to say. That so we decided that there were really good students who wanted to go to medical school, but they were really good in math and science, but there wasn't any pathway through engineering for them. So we decided we would make a curriculum that would be an accredited engineering curriculum, but it would have a pathway for pre-med students to take physiology, which was almost impossible in other engineering departments because it's a 5-credit course, and biology, and all, we made a path for those students to take organic chemistry and so forth. So that was a conscious thing, that we wanted to recruit students from across the campus, not just people who wanted to be engineers. Pre-meds.
We also took biocore.
Yeah.
We had path for. In fact, some of our early undergraduates came to us and they said, I really want to be an engineer. My parents want me to go to medical school, but biomedical engineering is okay, and they were able to pursue.
And my experience as chair of electrical engineering was it was impossible to get students female students to come to electrical engineering. So that pathway that we made for pre-med and so forth attracted female students. Very few engineering departments at that time had any female students, and we quickly got like 40% of our students were female. In the other engineering departments, there's like a half a dozen in a big department like electrical engineering. So that was an asset that we intentionally did so that we could attract good students of all kinds from across campus.
I think nationally now, BME is the #1 successful major to get into med school.
Yeah.
It beats biochemistry.
Yeah.
Any other stories? Yeah. Rush, I've already, I think I was the second class to start the BME process in 2000. And I definitely was beneficiary of the bio-forward kind of perspective with BME. I went on to medical school after a stint in industry with biomedical engineering. And so I'm a practicing orthopedic surgeon. And so I definitely appreciate the focus, especially on the design courses, which we use every day. So thank you.
How about graduate students, early graduate students? Does anyone want to volunteer? Graduate students usually not shy.
Hey, Wally, you were a graduate.
One experience from the design course early on. I told Willis and Ron, I really didn't have the skills to teach this course. I said, don't worry. It's not your job to know about it. You're just supposed to connect people. So one of the first projects we had, we were supposed to be able to determine if a blue whale was ovulating. And the idea was that you were supposed to get a blood sample from this blue whale. And the client had the idea that you could somehow, with a kind of a harpoon device, penetrate the tail of the blue whale. And the students figured out that the consistency of the tail of a blue whale was like a radio tire. And I said, what have I got myself into? This is insane. Like harpoon whales and research project. But over time I saw the genius of it. We got better at faculty at culling the projects and making them more doable. And the students got to try various things before they had to go through the first boring kind of seminal class with a lot of math equations. And if they liked it, then they knew what they wanted to do. So I saw the genius, but it took a little while.
Well, Bill mentioned the
startup companies and patents that arose from our faculty and from the design course. I don't know, Janine, do you know how many patents were filed from BME?
Yeah, because they asked me to look it up. We have 280 patents and patent applications, 25 license agreements, including with 4 of the startup companies. 14, not 4. 14. Yeah. Including the Trilogy Medical, which was a clean design product that we did.
That's incredible. We have time maybe for 1 or 2 more stories, comments. I see Dave Beebe there. Dave always has a story.
Yeah, I was saving mine for my next talk. I will tell the John Webster story. Because I realized it's actually, it actually will tie into the topic that Justin and I are talking about in terms of improving things in the industry in maybe an indirect way. But I remember, so John actually was my master's advisor. Denise Stanton actually was my PhD advisor. Rob Radwin was on my PhD committee. And John Puccinelli was a PhD student. So I have my fingerprints on a number of aspects. But I think it was when I was back here as faculty, and I think my wife and I were going to be going to Europe for one of the first times we've been to Europe. And I was asking John, telling him we're going to be going to Europe. And he said, "Oh, let me tell you about," and I'm sure the Websters that are here will remember this, and you can correct anything that I remembered incorrectly in the story. But John was a very matter-of-fact kind of guy, right? And so he just in this very calm, even voice said, "Well, we went to Europe, my family, and I think most of the kids were adults at this point. And he said, we decided we wanted to bicycle in Europe." So the story, as I recall it, again, may not be entirely accurate, but he said, "So I wrote up a form letter and took a picture of our family, and I sent it to all the mayors of these little towns along one of the rivers in Europe, and said, hey, we're this American family." This is probably back in, you could tell me when it was, in the 80s or 70s even. And I wrote this out, and he got responses from most of them, apparently, and they ended up being put up, like, as hosts of these little cities in Airbnbs before they were thing, and, in this. But that was John Webster, right? He didn't question whether something was okay to do or could be done. He just did it. And it resonated with me because I grew up on a farm, which sort of had a similar mentality when you grow up on a farm. It's not whether you can do something, it has to be done, right? And John very much had that implementation, can-do attitude, that nothing was impossible, I don't think that ever entered his mind. It was just something needed to be done. Let's do it. It didn't matter whether somebody else had done it or not before. So he was a great mentor.
Seems like a really good segue to the next part of the program to me. So thank you, Willis. Thank you, Rob.